Maya Thompson, 27, standing outside Bella's Bridal boutique in downtown Portland, my hands trembling as I watch through the window. My sister Jessica is inside for her final dress fitting, spinning in front of the three-way mirror, in what she believes is a custom Vera Wang original. She has no idea that the intricate beadwork cascading down the bodice, the hand-sewn French lace sleeves, and the cathedral train that pools like liquid silk around her feet are all my designs. Every stitch, every pearl, every delicate crystal placement came from my hands during countless late nights in my Los Angeles studio. The same hands that our father once called worthless for choosing thread and fabric over law books and courtrooms. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. In my purse sits a leather portfolio containing sketches, fabric samples, and the original design contract bearing my signature as head designer of Ethereal Couture, the boutique that sold this dress to my family for $35,000. They paid that amount believing they were investing in European craftsmanship, never knowing they were purchasing the work of the daughter they cast aside 6 years ago for refusing to abandon her dreams. As I watch Jessica admire herself in what she thinks is her perfect dress, I can't help but remember the little girl who used to sit beside me as I sketched evening gowns in the margins of my homework, telling me I would design her wedding dress someday. That promise feels both fulfilled and hollow as I prepare to walk through those doors and shatter the illusion of their perfect wedding preparations. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to a childhood where creativity was seen as a phase to outgrow rather than a gift to nurture. Growing up in the West Hills of Portland, our sprawling Victorian home stood as a monument to traditional success. David Thompson, my father, had built his reputation as one of Oregon's most prominent corporate attorneys, the kind of man who commanded respect in marble-floored courtrooms and oak-paneled boardrooms. His office walls displayed diplomas from Harvard Law and photographs with senators, judges, and Fortune 500 executives. Linda Thompson, my mother, had carved her own empire in luxury real estate, selling million-dollar homes to tech executives and timber barons. Her business cards featured her standing in front of pristine properties, her smile as polished as the marble countertops she marketed. Jessica, 3 years younger than me, embodied everything our parents valued. She excelled in debate club, maintained a perfect GPA, and planned to follow our father into law school. Even as a child, she possessed an innate understanding of what our parents considered worthwhile pursuits. She would sit at the dinner table discussing Supreme Court cases while I doodled dress designs on my napkin, earning disapproving glances from across the mahogany table. Our parents saw Jessica as their legacy, the child who would carry forward the Thompson name with distinction and respectability. My earliest memories involve fabric and color. While other children played with conventional toys, I begged for trips to the fabric district downtown, running my small fingers along bolts of silk and chiffon. I spent allowance money on fashion magazines, studying the work of Coco Chanel, Alexander McQueen, and Diane von Furstenberg. My bedroom became a makeshift studio, with sketch pads covering every surface and a small sewing machine I'd convinced my grandmother to buy me for my 13th birthday. The machine hummed late into the night as I created outfits for school, costumes for theater productions, and elaborate formal wear that existed only in my imagination. Jessica and I shared a bond that transcended our different interests. Despite the 3-year age gap, we were inseparable companions who created elaborate games in our expansive backyard and shared secrets under the antique canopy bed in her room. She would sit patiently as I explained my latest design concepts, her eyes wide with admiration as I sketched evening gowns and cocktail dresses. When I get married, she would whisper during these late-night conversations, "You're going to design the most beautiful dress in the world for me." I would nod seriously, already envisioning the perfect creation that would make her feel like a princess. On weekends, I would transform Jessica into my living mannequin, draping fabric around her small frame and experimenting with different silhouettes. She giggled as I pinned hemlines and adjusted necklines, never complaining about the long hours spent standing still while I perfected my techniques. Our mother would occasionally peek into the room, her expression a mixture of amusement and concern. "It's nice that Maya has a hobby," she would say to my father during their evening conversations, the word hobby carrying an unmistakable dismissiveness that suggested temporary childhood fancy rather than genuine talent. The first significant crack in our family's facade appeared during my sophomore year of high school. Mrs. Adelaide Foster, my art teacher, submitted my portfolio to a prestigious national design competition without my knowledge. When the acceptance letter arrived, announcing that my evening wear collection had placed third among thousands of entries nationwide, I rushed home with unprecedented excitement. The competition judges had praised my innovative use of sustainable materials and my sophisticated understanding of construction techniques. For the first time, I had concrete validation that my passion possessed legitimate merit. I burst through the front door, waving the letter and prize check like victory flags. "Mom, Dad, you have to see this," I called, finding them in the kitchen reviewing legal documents.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Over coffee. My father glanced up from his contracts with mild irritation at the interruption. I thrust the letter toward them, words tumbling out in an excited rush about the competition, the judges' comments, and the scholarship opportunities this recognition might provide. My mother read the letter carefully, her expression neutral. "That's very nice, sweetheart," she said finally, setting the paper aside. "But you shouldn't let this distract you from your real coursework." My father barely looked up from his documents. "Design competitions are fine for extracurricular activities," he said in the same tone he might use to discuss a school bake sale, "but they're not career foundations. You need to focus on subjects that will get you into a good university." The dismissal stung more than any harsh criticism might have. They weren't angry about my achievement, they simply didn't consider it significant enough to merit serious attention. The letter and check sat forgotten on the kitchen counter while they returned to their important adult conversations about contracts and closing dates. That night, Jessica found me crying in my room, the competition letter crumpled in my hands. She sat beside me on the bed, her 14-year-old wisdom offering comfort that our parents had failed to provide. "They just don't understand what this means," she said softly, smoothing out the wrinkled paper. "But I do. This is amazing, Maya. You're going to be famous someday." Her unwavering support meant everything in that moment of disappointment, creating a memory I would cherish even after everything fell apart between us. As my high school years progressed, the tension between my aspirations and my parents' expectations intensified. They enrolled me in advanced placement courses designed to prepare students for pre-law or business programs, despite my consistent requests for art and design classes. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, tried to mediate by explaining that many successful fashion designers possessed strong business backgrounds, but my parents viewed this as enabling what they considered a foolish fantasy. "Maya is a smart girl," my father would say during parent-teacher conferences, "too smart to waste her potential on something so unstable." Despite their opposition, I continued developing my skills through independent study and weekend workshops at the local community college. I saved money from part-time jobs to purchase professional-grade equipment and high-quality materials. My bedroom studio expanded to include a dress form, industrial-grade scissors, and bins of organized notions. I created pieces for friends' homecoming dances and prom nights, earning a reputation throughout school as the student who could transform any vision into wearable art. Word spread through social media, and soon I was receiving requests from students at neighboring schools who had heard about my work. The tension reached a breaking point during my senior year when college applications demanded decisions about my future. I had secretly applied to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles, using my competition portfolio and recent commissions as supporting materials. When the acceptance letter arrived, along with notification of a partial scholarship, I felt simultaneously elated and terrified. This represented everything I had dreamed of, but I knew my parents would view it as a betrayal of their expectations and investment in my education. I chose to reveal my college plans during a family dinner, hoping that the formal setting might encourage more rational discussion. Jessica was home from a debate tournament, excited to share her own college acceptance letters from several prestigious universities. The dining room felt especially elegant that evening, with my mother's antique china and fresh flowers from her garden, creating an atmosphere of celebration and accomplishment. I waited until dessert was served before clearing my throat and announcing that I had something important to share. "I've been accepted to FITM in Los Angeles," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's one of the top fashion design schools in the country, and they've offered me a scholarship." The silence that followed felt deafening. My father set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision, his expression shifting from surprise to disappointment to barely controlled anger. My mother's face went pale, as if I had announced a terminal illness rather than an educational opportunity. "Absolutely not," my father said, his voice carrying the same authority he used in courtrooms. We've discussed this repeatedly, Maya. Fashion design is not a viable career path for someone with your intelligence and opportunities. You'll attend University of Oregon like we planned and major in business or communications. Something practical that will provide security. His tone brooked no argument, as if my acceptance letter were merely a suggestion rather than a genuine possibility. I had prepared for this response, but the finality in his voice still shocked me. "Dad, this is my dream," I said, my voice rising despite my attempts to remain calm. "I've wanted this since I was a child. You've seen my work, you know I have talent." Jessica reached for my hand under the table, offering silent support while remaining carefully neutral in front of our parents. My mother joined the conversation with her practiced diplomatic tone, the same voice she used to handle difficult real estate clients. "Darling, we understand that you enjoy designing as a hobby," she said, "but hobbies don't pay mortgages or provide retirement funds. We've worked hard to give you opportunities for a stable, respected career. Why would you throw that away for something so uncertain?" Her words carried the weight of practical wisdom, but I heard them as a fundamental rejection of who I was and what I valued. They saw my passion as a character flaw to be corrected rather than a gift to be nurtured. The argument continued for hours, with voices rising and emotions escalating beyond the polite boundaries our family typically maintained. I presented statistics about successful fashion designers, information about the industry's growth, and examples of FEDM graduates who had built thriving careers. My parents countered with stories of starving artists, failed businesses, and the importance of financial security. Jessica tried to mediate, suggesting compromises like double majoring or treating design as a minor, but both sides had moved beyond the possibility of middle ground. Finally, my father delivered an ultimatum that would change everything between us. "You have a choice, Maya," he said, his voice cold with finality. "Accept our support for a practical education that will provide real opportunities, or pursue this fashion fantasy on your own. But understand that if you choose Los Angeles and design school, you're choosing to do it without our financial help, without our approval, and without our family name opening doors for you." The threat hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle, acrid and lingering. I looked around the dining room where we had shared countless meals, celebrated birthdays and holidays, and built memories that I thought would last forever. The antique furniture, expensive artwork, and fresh flowers suddenly felt like museum pieces from someone else's life. My mother sat frozen in her chair, clearly uncomfortable with my father's harsh ultimatum, but unwilling to contradict him. Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she realized our family was fracturing before her eyes. "Then I choose Los Angeles," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper but carrying absolute conviction. The words felt both liberating and terrifying, like stepping off a cliff while hoping to discover I could fly. My father nodded curtly, as if I had simply confirmed his expectations rather than breaking his heart and my own. "Then you should pack your things," he said. "If you're going to be independent, you might as well start immediately." That night became a blur of packing, crying and saying goodbye to the only home I had ever known. Jessica helped me fold clothes and pack art supplies, both of us too emotional for much conversation. "This isn't forever," she whispered as we wrapped my sewing machine in blankets for the journey. "They'll change their minds when they see how successful you become." I wanted to believe her optimism, but the coldness in my father's eyes suggested that some decisions couldn't be undone with apologies or achievements. The next morning, I loaded my Honda Civic with everything I owned, and began the drive to Los Angeles with $800 in savings, a partial scholarship, and a determination that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I had never lived alone, never managed my own finances, and never been more than a few hours' drive from home. But as I watched Portland disappear in my rearview mirror, I felt something I had never experienced before. The absolute freedom to succeed or fail based entirely on my own choices and efforts. Los Angeles overwhelmed me immediately with its sprawling freeways, endless sunshine, and the sheer scale of ambition that seemed to pulse through every neighborhood. FIDM's campus buzzed with creative energy that I had never experienced, filled with students from around the world who shared my passion for design and fashion. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who understood that fashion was art, business, and cultural expression, rather than mere vanity or frivolous decoration. My living situation was precarious at first. I shared a tiny apartment in Koreatown with 3 other students, sleeping on an air mattress in the living room, and keeping my clothes in plastic storage bins. I worked nights at a 24-hour diner and weekends at a fabric store, earning just enough to cover rent, utilities, and ramen noodles. The exhaustion was constant, but it felt purposeful in a way that my privileged Portland childhood never had. Every dollar earned, every grade achieved, and every skill mastered belonged entirely to me. Professor Elena Martinez became my first real mentor, recognizing something in my work that even I didn't fully understand yet. She was a former Versace designer who had transitioned to teaching after building her own successful label, and her classroom felt like a gateway to the professional world I desperately wanted to enter. "You have an instinct for construction that can't be taught," she told me after reviewing my first major project. "Most students learn to copy existing techniques, but you understand how fabric wants to move." Her encouragement meant everything to someone who had spent years being told that her talents were worthless. Professor Martinez introduced me to Rachel Kim during my second semester, a fellow student who shared my obsession with precision and my willingness to work through exhaustion to achieve perfection. Rachel had grown up in her grandmother's tailoring shop in San Francisco, learning hand-sewing techniques that most modern designers never mastered. Where I excelled at conceptual design and draping, she possessed the technical skills to transform my visions into flawless reality. Our partnership began organically when she offered to help me complete a particularly complex evening gown for Professor Martinez's advanced construction class. The dress featured a bodice with over 300 individual beads, sewn in a spiral pattern that required mathematical precision to execute properly. I had designed the pattern based on the Fibonacci sequence, creating a visual representation of natural growth that would shimmer and move with the wearer's body. Rachel studied my sketches for hours before suggesting modifications to the construction sequence that would make the beading both more stable and more fluid. Together we spent 72 hours straight in the studio, taking turns hand-sewing each bead, while the other cut pattern pieces or pressed seams. The final result exceeded even my ambitious expectations, earning recognition from visiting industry professionals who happened to observe our critique session. Word of our collaboration spread through the small, interconnected fashion community of Los Angeles. Classmates began commissioning pieces for special events, offering payment that supplemented our meager incomes, while providing invaluable experience working with real clients who had specific needs and deadlines. We designed a red carpet gown for a soap opera actress attending the Daytime Emmy Awards, a wedding dress for a professor's daughter, and a series of cocktail dresses for a Beverly Hills socialite who had heard about our work through her personal shopper. Each project taught us something new about the business side of fashion design. We learned to write detailed contracts, source materials at wholesale prices, and manage client expectations while maintaining artistic integrity. Rachel proved naturally gifted at client relations, her calm demeanor and technical expertise, inspiring confidence in nervous brides and demanding celebrities alike. I discovered that I thrived under pressure, often producing my most innovative solutions when faced with seemingly impossible deadlines or budget constraints. Our reputation grew through social media and word-of-mouth recommendations, leading to increasingly prestigious commissions. A music video stylist hired us to create costumes for a pop star's latest production, introducing us to the fast-paced world of entertainment fashion, where concepts had to be developed, approved, and executed within weeks rather than months. The experience was chaotic and exhilarating, requiring us to work 18-hour days, while coordinating with choreographers, lighting designers, and camera operators, who all had opinions about how our costumes would photograph and move. During my third year at FEDM, I received an email that would change my relationship with my family forever. Jessica had written to tell me about her engagement to Michael Harrison, a law school classmate who had recently accepted a position at a prestigious Portland firm. Her message was filled with excitement about wedding planning, venue selections, and dress shopping appointments. She mentioned that our parents seemed happier than they had been in months, throwing themselves into wedding preparations with the enthusiasm they had never shown for my achievements. Reading about Jessica's happiness filled me with conflicting emotions. I felt genuine joy for my sister, who deserved every moment of celebration and love. But I also experienced a sharp pain at being excluded from such an important milestone in her life. The wedding she had dreamed about since childhood was happening without my involvement, designed by someone else's hands, and celebrated by a family that had chosen to continue without me. The little girl who had promised to wear my creation when she married was planning her dress fitting with strangers. I wrote and deleted dozens of responses to Jessica's email, struggling to find words that conveyed congratulations without bitterness or longing, without desperation. Eventually, I sent a brief but warm message, expressing my happiness for her engagement, and my hope that her wedding would be everything she had dreamed of. I didn't mention my hurt at being excluded from the planning process, or my sadness that our childhood promises would remain unfulfilled. Some bridges had been burned too thoroughly, for simple expressions of affection to rebuild them. Months passed without further communication from Portland. I threw myself into my studies and client work, using professional achievement as a buffer against personal disappointment. Rachel and I had begun discussing plans to launch our own label after graduation, pooling our savings and skills to create something that belonged entirely to us. We spent countless hours developing our brand identity, sketching designs for our debut collection, and researching the business requirements for establishing a legitimate fashion house. The opportunity that would define our careers arrived through Professor Martinez, who had maintained relationships with industry professionals throughout her teaching career. Madame Vivienne Dubois, owner of Ethereal Couture, one of Los Angeles's most exclusive bridal boutiques, was seeking emerging designers to create pieces for her upcoming trunk show. Ethereal Couture catered to clients willing to spend enormous amounts for truly unique wedding gowns, the kind of brides who valued artistry over brand recognition, and were willing to wait months for perfect craftsmanship. Professor Martinez recommended Rachel and me based on our collaborative work and our reputation for delivering exceptional quality under pressure. The opportunity represented everything we had worked toward: legitimate industry recognition, financial compensation that could fund our future endeavors, and exposure to the type of clientele who appreciated true craftsmanship. Madame Dubois invited us to her Beverly Hills showroom for a meeting that would determine whether we were ready for professional-level commissions. The Ethereal Couture showroom took my breath away, with its understated elegance and museum-quality displays. Gowns hung like sculptures in climate-controlled cases, each dress representing hundreds of hours of meticulous handwork. Madame Dubois herself was a formidable woman in her 60s, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her sharp eyes missing no detail of our portfolio presentation. She examined our sketches with the intensity of an art critic, evaluating a new exhibition, asking pointed questions about our construction techniques, material sources, and design philosophies. "Fashion is temporary," she said, studying one of my evening gown designs, "but style is eternal. Your work suggests an understanding of this distinction that many designers never achieve." She offered us a trial commission, 3 gowns for her trunk show, with the possibility of ongoing collaboration if our pieces met her exacting standards. The payment she proposed exceeded our combined income from the previous 6 months, representing not just financial security, but validation that our work possessed commercial viability. We accepted immediately, then spent the following week sketching concepts that would showcase our individual strengths, while maintaining a cohesive aesthetic vision. I designed a minimalist sheath with architectural details. Rachel created a romantic ball gown with hand-embroidered botanical motifs, and together we developed an avant-garde creation that pushed the boundaries of traditional bridal wear. Each design required techniques we had never attempted before, forcing us to research historical construction methods and experiment with innovative applications of traditional skills. The next 4 months became a blur of fabric selection, pattern development, and construction work that consumed every available hour. We rented a small studio space near campus, equipped with professional-grade equipment and proper lighting for detail work. Our days began before sunrise, and often ended well past midnight, fueled by coffee, determination, and the constant awareness that this opportunity could launch our careers, or reveal our limitations. The first dress, my architectural sheath, challenged every assumption I had held about simple designs. The clean lines required absolute precision in cutting and sewing, with no embellishments to hide imperfections or structural flaws. I developed a new technique for creating invisible seams that would maintain the dress's sleek silhouette while providing the internal structure necessary for proper fit and movement. The final result appeared effortless, while representing some of the most technically demanding work I had ever attempted. Rachel's ball gown became a masterpiece of traditional craftsmanship, elevated by contemporary innovation. She hand-embroidered over 200 individual flowers across the skirt, using silk threads in 17 different shades of ivory and champagne. Each flower required approximately 3 hours to complete, but the cumulative effect created a garden of ethereal beauty that seemed to grow organically from the fabric itself. The bodice featured couture-level boning, an internal structure that provided support while remaining completely invisible beneath the romantic exterior. Our collaborative avant-garde piece pushed both of us beyond our comfort zones and established artistic boundaries. The dress featured a dramatic asymmetrical neckline that transitioned into sleeves of varying lengths, creating visual movement that challenged traditional bridal symmetry. We incorporated unexpected materials like metallic threads and subtle crystal accents that caught light without overwhelming the overall design. The construction required developing entirely new techniques for joining dissimilar fabrics, while maintaining structural integrity throughout complex curves and angles. Madame Dubois' reaction to our completed pieces exceeded our most optimistic expectations. She examined each dress with the thoroughness of a quality control inspector, testing seams, evaluating fit, and assessing every technical detail that separated professional work from student projects. "These pieces represent the future of bridal couture," she announced after her evaluation was complete. "You understand that luxury is not about expense, but about excellence." She offered us permanent positions as designers for Ethereal Couture, with contracts that included creative freedom, competitive compensation, and the opportunity to build our reputations within her established client base. Working for Ethereal Couture transformed my understanding of the
Fashion industry from theoretical knowledge to practical experience. Our clients included celebrities, socialites, and successful professional women who viewed their wedding gowns as once-in-a-lifetime investments in personal expression. Each consultation required careful listening to understand not just what the bride wanted to look like, but who she wanted to be on her wedding day. We learned to translate abstract concepts like timeless elegance or modern romance into specific design elements that would make each woman feel like the most beautiful version of herself. The work was demanding in ways that school projects had never been. Clients expected perfection not just in the final product but throughout every interaction, from initial consultations through final fittings. We developed expertise in diplomatic communication, learning to guide brides toward designs that would flatter their bodies and suit their wedding venues while maintaining their sense of personal agency in the decision-making process. Rachel proved particularly gifted at managing the emotional aspects of wedding dress creation, offering calm reassurance during moments of pre-wedding stress while keeping projects on schedule and within budget. My portfolio grew to include dozens of unique pieces, each representing a different challenge and achievement. I designed a destination wedding gown that could be packed and shipped internationally without wrinkling, a vintage-inspired dress that incorporated lace from the bride's grandmother's wedding gown, and a modern creation for a bride who wanted to honor her Chinese heritage while appealing to her American fiancé's family. Each project taught me something new about construction techniques, cultural sensitivity, and the psychological importance of wedding attire in marking life transitions. 2 years after joining Ethereal Couture, I received an email that would test everything I had learned about forgiveness, family, and professional integrity. The message came from Bella's Bridal Boutique in Portland, forwarded through our website's contact form. They were seeking a designer for a high-profile wedding where the bride had specifically requested something unique and unforgettable for her December ceremony. The budget was substantial, the timeline was generous, and the client had expressed willingness to travel to Los Angeles for consultations and fittings. I almost deleted the email without reading the attachment, assuming it was another standard inquiry from a bride who had seen our work on social media. But something made me click through to the client information form, and my heart stopped when I saw the name Jessica Thompson listed as the bride, with Michael Harrison as the groom and December 15th as the wedding date. My sister, who had once promised to wear my designs, was unknowingly requesting a custom gown from the very person she had lost when our family chose tradition over truth. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. Jessica, who had supported our parents' decision to cut me off for pursuing fashion design, was now seeking exactly the kind of artistry and craftsmanship they had dismissed as worthless. The wedding she was planning with their full support and financial backing would be incomplete without the skills they had refused to value when they belonged to their own daughter. She was willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars for the work they had considered a frivolous waste of time and talent. I stared at the email for hours, reading and rereading every detail, while emotions cycled through shock, anger, sadness, and something that might have been amusement. The client profile indicated that Jessica worked as a junior associate at Morrison, Williams and Associates, the same type of prestigious law firm our father had always envisioned for me. She lived in the same West Hills neighborhood where we had grown up, maintaining the lifestyle and connections that came with family approval and financial support. Her engagement announcement had been featured in Portland's Society magazine, complete with photographs and details about the couple's educational backgrounds and professional achievements. The wedding she was planning sounded exactly like the kind of event our family would orchestrate: 200 guests, reception at Timberline Lodge, flowers by Portland's most exclusive florist, and catering by a chef who had earned national recognition. Every vendor had been selected for reputation and prestige, creating an event that would reflect well on both families' social standing and financial success. The dress represented the final crucial element, requiring something spectacular enough to complement the elaborate celebration while unique enough to generate the kind of compliments that would be remembered and discussed for years. Rachel found me still staring at the email when she arrived at the studio the following morning. I showed her the inquiry without explanation, watching her face change as she processed the client name and recognized the significance of what had happened. She had heard enough stories about my family over the years to understand immediately why this particular commission represented more than a business opportunity. "What are you going to do?" she asked carefully, recognizing that my response would reveal how much healing had occurred during my years of independence. I honestly didn't know. Every instinct told me to decline the commission and maintain the professional boundaries that had protected me from further family drama. But another part of me, the part that had once promised a little girl she could wear my most beautiful creation on her wedding day, felt called to honor that commitment despite everything that had happened between us. The opportunity also represented a chance to demonstrate the value of skills our parents had dismissed, to prove that the career they had considered worthless could create something extraordinary enough to define the most important day of their daughter's life. After 3 days of agonizing consideration, I responded to the inquiry with a professional message expressing interest in the project and suggesting an initial consultation to discuss the bride's vision and preferences. I used my professional name, Maya Thompson Kim, which incorporated Rachel's surname to reflect our creative partnership while maintaining enough of my original identity to be technically honest if questions arose later. The name change had been partly practical, helping to establish our brand identity, but it also served to create distance between my professional success and my family history. Jessica's response arrived within hours, filled with enthusiasm about the possibility of working with Ethereal Couture and gratitude for our willingness to accommodate her timeline. She mentioned that she had researched our work extensively and felt confident that we could create something perfect for her vision of elegant sophistication with unique artistic details. She suggested meeting in Portland for the initial consultation, offering to cover all travel expenses and accommodate our schedules for maximum convenience. The eagerness in her message suggested that she had no idea who she was corresponding with, viewing me simply as a designer whose work aligned with her aesthetic preferences. The consultation was scheduled for the following month, giving me time to prepare mentally and professionally for seeing my sister for the first time in over 5 years. I spent weeks researching current bridal trends, studying photographs of Timberline Lodge to understand the venue's architectural style, and developing preliminary design concepts that would complement the setting while showcasing our signature techniques. I also prepared myself emotionally for the possibility that Jessica might recognize me during our meeting, despite the changes that time and experience had created in my appearance and demeanor. Rachel insisted on accompanying me to Portland, partly for professional support but mostly because she worried about my emotional state during such a charged encounter. We booked a suite at the Hotel Monaco downtown, far enough from my family's neighborhood to avoid accidental encounters but close enough to the bridal boutique for convenient meetings. I packed my most professional wardrobe, choosing pieces that would project competence and success while feeling like armor against potential emotional vulnerability. The portfolio I assembled showcased our best work without including any pieces that might trigger memories of my childhood sketches or aesthetic preferences. The flight to Portland felt surreal as familiar landscapes emerged through the airplane window. Mount Hood's snow-capped peak pierced through morning clouds exactly as it had during my childhood, when family ski trips to Timberline Lodge had been annual traditions filled with hot chocolate and sibling competitions on the bunny slopes. The Columbia River carved its ancient path through the gorge, unchanged despite the years that had transformed me from rejected daughter to successful designer. Rachel squeezed my hand as we descended, offering silent support for the emotional minefield I was about to navigate. Bella's Bridal Boutique occupied a restored Victorian mansion in the Pearl District, its elegant facade reflecting the kind of upscale sophistication that Portland had cultivated during my absence. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over displays of designer gowns, each dress positioned to catch light and create the illusion of movement even while motionless. The owner, Margaret Bella, greeted us with the practiced warmth of someone accustomed to managing nervous brides and anxious families. She led us to a private consultation suite decorated in soft champagne and ivory tones, explaining that Jessica would arrive shortly with her mother and maid of honor. My hands trembled slightly as I arranged fabric samples and design sketches on the antique coffee table, each movement carefully controlled to project professional confidence while my heart hammered against my ribs. 5 years had passed since I last saw my mother's face or heard Jessica's laugh. 5 years of wondering whether they ever thought about the daughter and sister who had disappeared from their carefully constructed lives. The woman walking through that door would be a stranger wearing my sister's face, shaped by experiences I hadn't shared, and memories that no longer included me. When the consultation suite door opened, time seemed to suspend itself in crystalline clarity. Jessica entered first, her blonde hair longer than I remembered, and styled in the kind of professional waves that suggested regular salon visits and careful maintenance. She wore a cream-colored sweater and tailored pants that spoke of good taste and comfortable finances, the uniform of successful young professionals who had never struggled to pay rent or chosen between groceries and art supplies. Behind her followed Linda Thompson, my mother, whose appearance shocked me more than I had prepared for. She had aged significantly, her auburn hair now silver white and her once confident posture slightly stooped, as if carrying invisible burdens that had accumulated over years of maintaining perfect facades. The third woman was unfamiliar, introduced as Jennifer Walsh, Jessica's college roommate and maid of honor. She possessed the kind of effortless elegance that came from private school educations and family trust funds, her presence serving as another reminder of the social circle Jessica inhabited with parental approval and financial support. The three women settled into plush chairs, while I struggled to maintain professional composure, grateful for Rachel's steadying presence beside me and the years of client consultations that had taught me to compartmentalize personal emotions during business meetings. "Miss Thompson Kim," Jessica said, her voice carrying the same musical quality I remembered from childhood, but pitched with adult confidence. "We're so excited to work with Ethereal Couture. Your portfolio is absolutely stunning." She spoke my professional name without recognition, looking directly into eyes that had once shared secrets and childhood dreams without seeing the sister who had been erased from family photographs and holiday celebrations. The moment crystallized everything I had lost when I chose truth over compliance, authenticity over approval. My mother studied me with the sharp attention she had once applied to evaluating potential real estate investments, her gaze traveling over my appearance as if trying to place a half-remembered face. Several times her expression shifted toward recognition before sliding away, unable to reconcile the polished professional sitting across from her with the rebellious teenager who had stormed out of their lives clutching art supplies and righteous indignation. The expensive suit I wore, my confident posture, and the obvious success represented by this consultation contradicted everything they had predicted about my chosen path. "The vision I have," Jessica continued, pulling out a folder filled with magazine clippings and Pinterest screenshots, "is timeless elegance with unique details that will photograph beautifully. The wedding is at Timberline Lodge in December, so I want something sophisticated enough for the mountain setting, but special enough to feel once in a lifetime." She spread images across the table showing classic silhouettes enhanced by intricate beadwork, delicate lace applications, and architectural details that required advanced construction skills to execute properly. As she described her dream dress, memories flooded back of the little girl who had sat patiently while I draped fabric around her small frame, who had promised that someday I would design the most beautiful wedding gown in the world for her special day. The irony was almost overwhelming. Jessica was unknowingly asking me to fulfill that childhood promise while our parents paid someone else to create what they had once dismissed as worthless frivolity. The dress she envisioned required exactly the skills they had refused to value when they belonged to their own daughter. Rachel took the lead in technical discussions, while I struggled to process the emotional complexity of the situation. She asked detailed questions about the venue's lighting, the ceremony timeline, and Jessica's preferences for movement and comfort during a long day of celebrations. Her professional expertise impressed all three women, who clearly appreciated working with someone who understood both the artistic and practical aspects of couture bridal design. I contributed when necessary, offering suggestions about construction techniques and design modifications that would enhance Jessica's vision, while showcasing our signature style. "What about the neckline?" my mother asked, studying one of the inspiration images Jessica had selected. "Something elegant but not too revealing for a church ceremony." Her voice carried the same careful modulation I remembered from childhood, when every public statement had been calculated to maintain appropriate appearances and social standing. She participated in the conversation as if she were the bride herself, offering opinions and preferences that revealed how deeply invested she remained in controlling family image and presentation. "I was thinking something classic," Jessica replied. "Maybe a boat neck, or off-the-shoulder design that's sophisticated but still romantic." She looked at me directly while speaking, seeking professional validation for her choices without recognizing the face that had once shared her bedroom and listened to her childhood fears. The disconnect between her trust in my professional opinion and her ignorance of my personal identity created a cognitive dissonance that threatened to overwhelm my carefully maintained composure. I forced myself to respond with the same measured professionalism I would apply to any client consultation, discussing neckline options and their relationship to overall dress silhouette. While my heart broke at the casual way she dismissed my existence. "For a December wedding at Timberline Lodge," I said, my voice steady, despite the emotional chaos beneath the surface, "we could incorporate subtle sleeves or a delicate bolero that would provide warmth during outdoor photography while maintaining the elegance you're seeking." The consultation continued for 2 hours, during which we discussed every aspect of Jessica's vision in minute detail. She wanted French lace for romantic texture, hand-sewn beading for catching candlelight, and a silhouette that would complement her figure while allowing comfortable movement during dancing and celebrations. Each request demonstrated sophisticated taste and clear understanding of what would create lasting impact, qualities I recognized from our childhood when she had possessed an innate sense of style and appropriateness. As we reviewed timeline and pricing information, Jennifer Walsh asked about our background and training, clearly impressed by the level of expertise we had demonstrated. Rachel provided our standard biography, mentioning FIDM, our mentorship under Professor Martinez, and our collaboration with Ethereal Couture, without revealing personal details that might trigger recognition. She described our design philosophy and commitment to creating unique pieces that reflected each bride's individual personality while maintaining timeless appeal. "It's so refreshing to work with designers who really understand what we're looking for," my mother commented, her approval evident in tone and body language. Jessica deserves something truly special for her wedding day. The maternal pride in her voice created a sharp contrast with the coldness she had shown when I announced my own dreams and ambitions 5 years earlier. She had never spoken about my achievements with such warmth or enthusiasm, viewing my artistic pursuits as embarrassments, rather than accomplishments worthy of celebration. Jessica nodded enthusiastically, clearly excited about the possibility of working with us to create her dream dress. "When would we be able to start the design process?" she asked. "I know it's probably a tight timeline, but this is exactly what I've been envisioning." Her eagerness reminded me of childhood moments when she had begged me to design elaborate outfits for her dolls or special occasions, the same excitement and trust she was now placing in someone she didn't recognize as her sister. We scheduled a follow-up appointment for the following week, allowing time for me to develop preliminary sketches based on our discussion, while Jessica considered the proposal and timeline we had presented. As the 3 women prepared to leave, my mother paused at the door, studying my face with renewed intensity. "Have we met before?" she asked, suddenly. "You look familiar somehow." The question hung in the air like a challenge, threatening to unravel the careful professional distance I had maintained throughout our meeting. "I have one of those faces," I replied with practiced casualness, meeting her gaze directly while my pulse raced with the possibility of discovery. "People tell me that all the time." The lie came easily after years of reinventing myself, but it felt heavy with the weight of everything I had lost when they chose to erase me from their lives. She nodded slowly, apparently satisfied with the explanation, and followed Jessica and Jennifer out of the boutique. After they left, I sat in stunned silence while Rachel handled the final details with Margaret Bella. The consultation had exceeded my worst fears and most optimistic hopes simultaneously, revealing that my family had continued their lives with apparent happiness, while completely eliminating my existence from their narrative. Jessica seemed genuinely content, planning a wedding that would celebrate everything our parents valued: prestigious career, appropriate marriage, and social standing that reflected well on family reputation. The drive back to our hotel passed in contemplative silence as Portland's familiar neighborhoods triggered memories I had carefully suppressed during years of independence. The West Hills mansions still projected the same affluent stability that had defined my childhood, their manicured lawns and luxury vehicles, suggesting that little had changed in the 5 years since my departure. I wondered whether my former bedroom had been converted to another purpose, or simply locked away like an uncomfortable memory that no one wanted to address directly. That evening, alone in my hotel room while Rachel handled business calls, I began sketching preliminary designs for Jessica's wedding dress. Each line I drew felt charged with emotional significance, transforming childhood promises into professional reality through a twist of fate that no one could have predicted. The dress I envisioned would be my masterpiece, incorporating every technique I had mastered and every lesson I had learned about creating beauty that transcended mere fashion to become art. The design that emerged from my sketches exceeded even my ambitious expectations. I envisioned a gown that would honor Jessica's request for timeless elegance, while showcasing the innovative construction techniques that had earned my reputation among discerning clients. The bodice would feature hand-sewn French lace, applied in a pattern that created optical illusions of movement and depth, each piece carefully positioned to enhance natural curves while maintaining structural integrity throughout hours of wear. The silhouette would be classic fit and flair, sophisticated enough for formal photography, but designed with hidden features that would allow comfortable movement during dancing and celebration. I planned to incorporate subtle bustling mechanisms that would transform the cathedral train into a dance-length hem without compromising the dress's overall aesthetic. The construction would require nearly 200 hours of handwork, representing the kind of investment in craftsmanship that justified the premium pricing Ethereal Couture commanded. Over the following week, I developed detailed technical drawings, showing every construction element from internal corsetry to hem finishes. Rachel collaborated on beading patterns that would catch light dramatically during candlelit ceremonies, while remaining subtle enough to photograph beautifully in natural daylight. We sourced materials from European suppliers, who specialized in couture-quality fabrics, selecting lace with perfect pattern matches and silk that would drape like liquid mercury, while maintaining structure throughout long days of wear. The second consultation focused on technical details and final design approval. Jessica, my mother, and Jennifer returned to Bella's bridal boutique with renewed enthusiasm, eager to see how their vision had been translated into specific design elements. I presented the sketches with professional confidence, explaining each feature and its contribution to the overall aesthetic, while carefully observing their reactions. Jessica's face lit up with genuine excitement as she studied the drawings, recognizing immediately that this dress would exceed her most optimistic expectations. "This is absolutely perfect," she breathed, tracing the lace patterns with her finger while studying construction details. "It's exactly what I imagined, but even more beautiful." Her approval felt like vindication for every hour I had spent developing technical skills and artistic vision, proof that my work possessed the quality and sophistication required to satisfy the most discerning clients. The little girl who had once admired my childhood sketches was now unknowingly commissioning my professional masterpiece. My mother examined the technical drawings with the analytical attention she applied to evaluating architectural plans for potential real estate investments. "The workmanship looks exceptional," she commented, clearly impressed by the level of detail and planning evident in our presentation. "Jessica will look absolutely stunning." Her praise carried the same tone she had once used to compliment other designers' work, while dismissing my own efforts as amateur hobby projects unworthy of serious consideration. The fitting schedule we established would require Jessica to travel to Los Angeles 3 times over the following months, allowing for initial measurements, preliminary fitting, and final adjustments before the December wedding. Each appointment would bring us face to face again, creating opportunities for recognition that would either expose my identity or demonstrate how completely I had been erased from their memory. The risk was substantial, but the opportunity to fulfill our childhood promise, while proving my professional worth, felt worth any potential consequences. Construction began immediately upon their approval, with Rachel and I dedicating ourselves completely to creating something that would serve as both wedding dress and artistic statement. Every stitch carried emotional weight, transforming years of separation and rejection into beauty that would celebrate the most important day of my sister's life. I worked with obsessive attention to detail, determined that this dress would represent the pinnacle of my technical skills and creative vision. The French lace application alone required 40 hours of meticulous handwork, each piece cut and positioned to create seamless patterns that appeared to grow organically from the fabric itself. I developed new techniques for securing delicate elements without visible stitching, creating the illusion that the lace had been woven directly into the silk, rather than applied afterward. The beading pattern incorporated over 800 individual crystals, hand-sewn in spiraling motifs that would catch light from every angle, while maintaining perfect balance and proportion. As construction progressed, I found myself thinking constantly about the woman who would wear this creation. Jessica had grown into someone I barely recognized, shaped by choices and experiences that had occurred during our years of separation. The confident professional who had sat across from me during consultations bore little resemblance to the uncertain teenager I remembered suggesting that our family's support had provided exactly the stability and encouragement they had refused to offer me. She had thrived within their expectations, while I had flourished, despite their rejection, creating parallel lives that might never have intersected without this unexpected commission. The first fitting appointment approached with mounting anticipation and anxiety. Jessica would see the dress on her own body for the first time, allowing both of us to evaluate how successfully my designs had translated her vision into reality. More importantly, the intimate nature of bridal fittings would require closer interaction and extended conversation, increasing the likelihood that she might recognize something familiar in my face or manner. I prepared myself for every possibility, from continued anonymity to dramatic revelation, while focusing primarily on ensuring that the dress would be everything she had dreamed of for her wedding day. The weeks between consultations and construction had provided time for reflection on the complex emotions this situation had triggered. Working on Jessica's dress had forced me to confront feelings I had buried beneath professional achievement and personal growth, acknowledging that some wounds never fully healed, despite successful career development and financial independence. The family that had rejected me continued to thrive.
Without questioning whether their decisions had been correct, or whether the daughter they had discarded might have achieved exactly the success they claimed to value. Yet creating this dress had also provided unexpected healing, allowing me to honor the relationship Jessica and I had shared before family politics destroyed our connection. Every intricate detail I crafted represented love for the sister who had once believed in my dreams, even if she had ultimately chosen family loyalty over individual truth. The dress would be my gift to both the child she had been and the woman she had become, a tangible expression of affection that transcended the hurt and disappointment that had defined our separation. The question that haunted me as the fitting approached was whether I would reveal my identity or maintain the professional distance that had protected both of us from confronting the painful realities of our family's choices. Jessica deserved to know that her childhood promise was being fulfilled by the sister she had lost, but she also deserved to enjoy her wedding preparations without the emotional complexity that revelation would introduce. The decision would ultimately depend on circumstances I couldn't predict, requiring me to balance personal truth with professional responsibility while honoring the love that had once defined our relationship. The first fitting appointment arrived with unseasonable Los Angeles rain drumming against the Ethereal Couture windows, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and anticipation that seemed appropriate for the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating for months. Jessica flew down alone this time, explaining that her mother had a conflicting real estate closing and Jennifer was managing bridesmaids' dress fittings in Portland. The absence of witnesses felt like fate providing an opportunity for private revelation, though I remained undecided about whether to seize that chance or maintain the professional boundaries that had protected us both from complicated truths. When Jessica entered the fitting room, her excitement was palpable. She had lost 10 pounds since our initial consultation, the result of pre-wedding stress and deliberate preparation for wearing a custom gown that would be photographed from every angle. Her figure had matured since our teenage years, developing the confident posture and refined movements that came from successful professional life and social acceptance. She wore minimal makeup and had pulled her hair into a simple ponytail, preparing for the intimate process of being dressed by strangers while trusting their expertise to transform her vision into reality. Rachel assisted with the initial fitting process while I made technical adjustments, both of us working with the practiced efficiency that came from years of managing nervous brides and delicate fabrics. The dress fit Jessica's body as if it had been grown rather than constructed, each seam and dart placed with mathematical precision to enhance her natural proportions while creating the illusion of effortless perfection. The French lace overlay followed the curves of her torso like flowing water, while the beaded details caught light from the fitting room's carefully positioned fixtures. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered when she first saw herself in the three-way mirror, her voice thick with emotion that threatened to spill over into tears that would ruin her makeup and delay the fitting process. "This is exactly what I dreamed of, but somehow even more beautiful than I imagined." She turned slowly, studying every angle and detail, while I watched her reaction with professional satisfaction and deeply personal pride. The dress that had consumed months of my life was fulfilling its purpose, creating the transformative experience that made bridal couture worth every hour of meticulous handwork. As I knelt to adjust the hem length, marking precise measurements for final alterations, Jessica's reflection caught my eye in the angled mirrors. For a moment our eyes met in the glass with startling directness, and I saw recognition flicker across her features like lightning illuminating a familiar landscape. Her expression shifted from bridal excitement to confused uncertainty, her head tilting slightly as she studied my face with the focused attention of someone trying to solve a puzzle that felt almost within reach. Maya, she said quietly, my childhood name falling from her lips like a question and an accusation simultaneously. The word hung in the perfumed air of the fitting room, heavy with years of separation and the weight of family secrets that had defined both our lives. Rachel froze in the middle of adjusting a shoulder seam, recognizing immediately that something significant was happening, but uncertain how to respond to a situation that had moved beyond professional boundaries into deeply personal territory. I stood slowly, my hands still holding the hem measurement tape while my heart hammered against my ribs with the force of years of suppressed emotion finally demanding acknowledgement. The moment I had prepared for and dreaded in equal measure had arrived without warning or ceremony, triggered by nothing more than a reflection and the intuitive recognition that some bonds couldn't be severed completely even by time and deliberate separation. "Hello, Jessica," I said simply, my voice carrying none of the professional distance I had maintained throughout months of secret collaboration. Her face cycled through shock, disbelief, anger, and something that might have been relief before settling into an expression of overwhelmed confusion. "You're supposed to be, they said you were," she stammered, her usual articulate confidence abandoned in the face of discovering that her estranged sister had been designing her wedding dress while hiding behind professional anonymity. The white gown that had seemed like perfection moments before suddenly felt charged with emotional complexity that threatened to overwhelm the joy of her wedding preparations. "I've been in Los Angeles for 5 years, I said, continuing to work on the dress adjustments as if this conversation were as routine as discussing bustle placement or train length. Building a career in exactly the field they said would never amount to anything worthwhile. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory guiding technical tasks while my mind processed the emotional magnitude of this moment. The dress that surrounded Jessica represented everything I had achieved despite their rejection, proof that the skills they had dismissed possessed not only commercial value but artistic merit worthy of their most important family celebration. Jessica stared at our reflection in the mirror, seeing for the first time the transformation that 5 years of independence had created in the sister she remembered as a rebellious teenager clutching art supplies and righteous indignation. The successful professional kneeling at her feet bore little resemblance to the dramatic young woman who had stormed out of family dinners and refused to conform to parental expectations. "They told me you had disappeared completely," she said, her voice barely audible above the sound of rain against windows. "That you had probably failed and were too proud to come home." The revelation that my family had constructed a narrative of my failure struck me with unexpected force, though it shouldn't have surprised me given their need to justify their decision to cut me off completely. They had apparently found it easier to imagine my destruction than to question whether their ultimatum had been cruel and short-sighted. "I survived," I said simply, "and then I thrived. This dress is just one example of what I've accomplished while you all convinced yourselves that I had vanished into obscurity." Rachel diplomatically excused herself from the fitting room, recognizing that this conversation required privacy that her presence would compromise. She murmured something about checking on other appointments and disappeared through the curtained doorway, leaving Jessica and me alone with years of accumulated hurt and the wedding dress that had brought us together under circumstances neither of us could have anticipated. The silence that followed felt heavy with everything we had lost and everything that remained unresolved between us. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jessica asked, her reflection meeting mine in the mirror, while tears threatened to spill over and ruin both her makeup and the delicate fabric of her gown. "Why did you let me hire you without knowing who you were?" The question carried accusation and hurt in equal measure, as if I had deliberately deceived her rather than simply accepting a commission that fate had delivered to my business. The complexity of my motivations felt too intricate to explain in simple terms, involving professional pride, personal healing, and the fulfillment of childhood promises that she might not even remember making. "Because you asked for something unique and unforgettable," I replied, continuing to work on hem adjustments while speaking to her reflection rather than turning to face her directly. "Because the little girl who used to sit still for hours while I draped fabric around her deserved to have the most beautiful wedding dress in the world, even if her family had decided that the person who promised to create it no longer existed." The words came out more bitter than I had intended, revealing the depth of hurt that professional success hadn't completely healed. Jessica's face crumpled at the reference to our childhood promises, memories clearly flooding back of afternoons spent in my makeshift bedroom studio, while I sketched elaborate gowns and described the perfect wedding dress I would someday create for her special day. I never forgot that promise, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion that made her sound like the uncertain teenager I remembered rather than the confident professional she had become. I looked for you, Maya, not at first but later, when I realized what we had done was wrong. The admission that she had eventually questioned our family's decision provided some comfort, though it couldn't undo the years of silence and separation that had shaped both our lives in ways that could never be completely undone. I know, I said gently, my anger softening in response to her obvious distress. I found out about your attempts to locate me. Mom kept all the letters we sent to each other, all the communications our parents intercepted to maintain the fiction that we had both moved on without looking back. This revelation shocked Jessica more than my identity had, her eyes widening as she processed the implications of systematic deception that had extended far beyond the original ultimatum. They kept us from each other deliberately, she asked, her voice rising with indignation that suggested she was finally understanding the full scope of what had been done to both of us. All this time I thought you had chosen to cut us off completely. Just like I thought you had decided to support their decision and write me off as the family disappointment, I replied, standing up from my kneeling position and finally facing her directly rather than through mirror reflections. We were both manipulated into believing the other had given up, when actually we were both trying to rebuild what they had destroyed. The recognition that we had been victims of the same deception rather than willing participants in mutual abandonment changed everything about how I understood our years of separation. Jessica stepped down from the fitting platform carefully, mindful of the elaborate gown that represented months of work and tens of thousands of dollars in materials and craftsmanship. Can we sit? She asked, gesturing toward the plush chairs positioned for family members during fittings. I need to process this without worrying about damaging the dress. Her practical concern for the gown's welfare demonstrated the same thoughtfulness I remembered from childhood, when she had always been careful with possessions and considerate of other people's feelings. We settled into facing chairs while I helped arrange the voluminous skirt to prevent wrinkles or damage to delicate beadwork. The surreal situation of having a deeply emotional conversation while Jessica wore the wedding dress I had created in secret felt like something from a fever dream, but it also seemed appropriate that this reunion should happen while she was wearing the fulfillment of our childhood promises. The dress served as tangible proof that some bonds survived even the most determined attempts to sever them completely. Tell me about these 5 years, Jessica said, her voice steadier now that we were seated and no longer navigating the emotional minefield of recognition while standing before mirrors that reflected both past and present simultaneously. I want to know what happened to you, how you survived, what you've accomplished. Her request felt like an invitation to share the story I had never been able to tell, the narrative of struggle and triumph that had transformed me from rejected daughter to successful designer. I began with those first terrifying months in Los Angeles, the shelters and minimum wage jobs that had taught me self-reliance while testing my commitment to the dreams our parents had dismissed as worthless fantasies. I described Professor Martinez's mentorship, Rachel's partnership, and the gradual development of skills and reputation that had led to opportunities with Ethereal Couture and clients who valued artistry over conventional measures of success. Jessica listened with growing amazement, clearly impressed by achievements that exceeded anything our family had predicted for my rebellious path. You've built exactly the life you always said you wanted, she said when I finished describing my current situation, despite everything they said about fashion being unstable and impractical. Her acknowledgement of my success felt like vindication for every difficult decision I had made during those early years of independence. I stayed and followed every rule they set, but I'm not sure I'm any happier than you are. This admission surprised me, given the obvious success and stability that Jessica's life represented. She lived in their old neighborhood, worked at a prestigious law firm, and was marrying someone our parents approved of completely. From the outside, she appeared to have achieved everything they valued: professional accomplishment, social standing, and the kind of security that came from making choices they understood and supported. The law firm is everything Dad promised it would be, she continued, her voice carrying a note of dissatisfaction I hadn't expected. Prestigious clients, excellent salary, partnership track that would make any parent proud. But I spend 60 hours a week reviewing contracts and documents that don't inspire me the way your sketches used to. Her confession revealed that success measured by parental approval didn't necessarily translate to personal fulfillment, a lesson I had learned through rejection rather than compliance. I asked, curious about the man she was planning to marry, and whether their relationship represented genuine connection or simply appropriate choice that met family expectations.
Her engagement announcement had emphasized his professional credentials and family background rather than qualities that might indicate compatibility or deep affection. Jessica's expression grew complicated as she considered how to describe her relationship honestly. "Michael is exactly the kind of man they wanted me to marry," she said carefully. "Successful, ambitious, from a good family with connections that will benefit both our careers. He's kind and intelligent, and he'll be a good husband." Her description sounded more like a business evaluation than a declaration of love, suggesting that even her most personal choices had been influenced by the family values that prioritize stability over passion. "But do you love him?" I pressed gently, recognizing that this might be the first time anyone had asked Jessica to consider her feelings rather than the practical advantages of her engagement. The question seemed to surprise her, as if love were a luxury rather than a fundamental requirement for marriage. "I think so," she replied uncertainly, "or at least I love the life we're building together. The partnership feels right, even if it doesn't feel like the fairy tale romance I used to imagine." Her honesty revealed that she had made the same kind of compromises with her heart that I had refused to make with my dreams, choosing security and approval over the uncertainty that came with following authentic desires. We sat in contemplative silence, while rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, both of us processing revelations that challenged assumptions we had held for years about our choices and their consequences. The wedding dress that had brought us together served as a symbol of everything we had lost and found again, created through circumstances that neither of us could have orchestrated but both of us had unconsciously hoped for. "What happens now?" Jessica asked finally, her voice small in the luxurious fitting room that suddenly felt like a confessional booth where family secrets were being examined and forgiven. "Do I tell them that you designed my dress? Do we pretend this conversation never happened? Do we try to rebuild something that was broken so long ago it might not be repairable?" The questions she posed reflected my own uncertainty about how to navigate this unexpected reunion. Part of me wanted to march into my parents' house and force them to confront the success they had refused to acknowledge, to demand apologies for years of separation that had been based on their inability to value anything outside their narrow definition of appropriate achievement. But another part of me recognized that some wounds cut too deep for simple reconciliation, that forgiveness required more than dramatic revelations and mutual recognition of past mistakes. "That depends on what you want," I said, recognizing that Jessica would bear the consequences of whatever choice we made about revealing my identity to our parents. She still lived in their world, worked in their city, and maintained relationships that would be complicated by acknowledgement of their systematic deception. "I've built a life without their approval or support. I don't need their validation anymore, but I won't force you to choose between family peace and honesty again." Jessica stood up carefully, moving to the mirror to study her reflection in the dress that now carried completely different meaning than it had an hour earlier. The beautiful gown that had seemed like the perfect expression of her wedding vision had become a symbol of lost time and complicated forgiveness, created by hands that had been dismissed and hearts that had been broken by the same people who would celebrate its beauty. "I want them to know," she said quietly, her reflection meeting mine in the mirror with newfound determination. "I want them to understand what they threw away when they decided your dreams weren't worth supporting. And I want you at my wedding, Maya, not as my designer, but as my sister." Her invitation felt like absolution for years of mutual resentment and carefully maintained distance. The final fitting appointments passed in a blur of technical adjustments and emotional conversations that rebuilt our relationship with careful honesty about everything we had experienced during our separation. Jessica shared details about our parents' lives, their occasional mentions of wondering what had happened to me, and their defensive justifications for decisions they seemed to privately question. I told her about the loneliness that success couldn't completely cure, the family holidays spent with chosen family instead of blood relatives, and the persistent hope that someday we might find our way back to each other. When Jessica's wedding day arrived in December, I stood in the bridal preparation suite at Timberline Lodge, watching my sister transform into the radiant bride she had always been meant to be. The dress I had created fit her perfectly, every bead and seam, placed with the precision that came from loving attention to detail and years of technical training. But more importantly, she glowed with happiness that seemed authentic rather than performed, suggesting that our reunion had provided healing she hadn't realized she needed. The moment of revelation came during the reception, when Jessica stood to make a speech that had not been planned or approved by our parents or wedding coordinators. With characteristic thoughtfulness, she had chosen a moment when guests were relaxed and celebratory, their attention focused but their emotions warm with champagne and shared joy. "Before Michael and I begin our new life together," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the lodge's grand dining room, I want to share something that makes this day even more special than I imagined possible." She gestured toward the head table where I sat with other family members, my presence having been explained as a college friend who had recently reconnected with the bride. "My wedding dress was created by someone very special to me," Jessica continued, "someone whose talent and vision have created the most beautiful gown I could have imagined. But more importantly, this dress was made by my sister Maya, who fulfilled a promise she made to me when we were children, despite years of separation that should have made that impossible." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sound of cutlery being set down and chairs shifting as guests processed this unexpected revelation. At the family table, my parents sat frozen, their faces cycling through shock, embarrassment, and something that might have been pride as they realized that the daughter they had dismissed had created the centerpiece of their younger daughter's perfect wedding. The dress they had praised and photographed from every angle had been crafted by hands they had declared worthless. "Maya chose to follow her dreams when our family couldn't understand or support them," Jessica continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "She built a successful career as a fashion designer in Los Angeles, creating beautiful gowns for brides who appreciate true artistry, and somehow through circumstances none of us could have planned, she was able to keep the promise we made to each other as children." The applause that followed was thunderous, led by Michael, who had learned the full story during our emotional conversations leading up to the wedding. Guests who appreciated dramatic storytelling and happy endings embraced the narrative of separated sisters reunited through the power of dreams and determination. But at the family table, my parents remained silent, clearly struggling to process revelations that challenged every assumption they had maintained about my life and their decisions. Later that evening, as the reception wound down and guests began to depart, my father approached me with the careful steps of someone navigating unfamiliar emotional territory. "Maya," he said formally, extending his hand as if greeting a business associate rather than the daughter he had banished 5 years earlier. "The dress is extraordinary. Jessica looks beautiful." His words carried grudging acknowledgement rather than warmth, but they represented more recognition than I had received in years. "Thank you," I replied, accepting his handshake while maintaining the emotional distance that had protected me throughout years of building independence. "She deserves something special for her wedding day." My response was polite but not welcoming, making clear that professional acknowledgement didn't automatically repair personal relationships that had been damaged by years of rejection and silence. My mother's approach was more emotional, her eyes bright with tears that suggested genuine regret rather than mere social embarrassment. "I didn't know," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion that seemed to encompass not just my career success, but all the years of wondering what had happened to the daughter they had cast aside. "We thought we were told." She trailed off, apparently unable to articulate exactly what they had been told or by whom. "You thought what you needed to think to justify your decision," I said gently but firmly, recognizing that some truths needed to be stated clearly even during moments of potential reconciliation. Just like I did what I needed to do to survive and build the life I wanted. My words weren't cruel, but they didn't offer easy absolution for choices that had caused years of pain for everyone involved. The conversation that followed was awkward and incomplete, touching on surface topics while avoiding the deeper emotional work that real reconciliation would require. We exchanged contact information and made vague promises about staying in touch, but all of us recognized that rebuilding family relationships would require more than single conversations and mutual acknowledgement of past mistakes. Some bridges could be repaired, but only with time, effort, and genuine commitment to understanding different perspectives. As Jessica and Michael departed for their honeymoon, she embraced me with tears in her eyes and gratitude in her voice. "Thank you," she whispered, "for keeping your promise, for forgiving me, and for being brave enough to tell the truth." Her words carried weight that extended far beyond appreciation for wedding dress design, acknowledging the courage required to maintain integrity despite family pressure and social expectations. The months that followed brought gradual healing and careful reconstruction of family relationships that had been damaged by years of silence and mutual misunderstanding. Jessica and I maintained regular contact, building adult friendship based on shared history and genuine affection rather than childhood proximity and parental mediation. My parents struggled more with accepting my choices and acknowledging their mistakes, but they made efforts to understand my life and career that suggested genuine desire for reconciliation. The wedding dress that had started as secret fulfillment of childhood promise became a symbol of everything we had lost and found again through circumstances that none of us could have predicted. It hung in Jessica's closet as a reminder that some bonds survive even the most determined attempts to sever them, and that dreams pursued with courage and persistence can create beauty that transcends personal relationships and family politics. Today, as I watch Jessica spin in front of mirrors during her final fitting, I see not just the successful lawyer she became, or the disappointed sister she had been, but the little girl who once believed in my dreams when no one else would. The dress that surrounds her represents more than fabric and thread. It embodies the power of keeping promises, the value of authentic relationships, and the possibility that families can heal even after years of separation and misunderstanding. Sometimes the most beautiful creations emerge from the most painful circumstances, transforming heartbreak into art and separation into eventual reunion. This dress, crafted in secret and revealed in love, will always remind us that some promises are worth keeping regardless of the cost, and that true family is defined not by approval or convenience, but by
willingness to love authentically despite difference and disappointment. 6 months after Jessica's wedding, I received an invitation that would test everything I thought I understood about forgiveness and family reconstruction. The envelope arrived at my Los Angeles studio on a Tuesday morning, thick cream paper with embossed lettering that spoke of formal occasions and careful consideration. Inside was an invitation to my father's 60th birthday celebration to be held at the Portland Country Club where our family had maintained membership for over 2 decades. The location choice felt deliberately symbolic, representing the social world that had once defined my identity before I chose authenticity over acceptance. The invitation bore my mother's elegant handwriting, addressing me as Maya Thompson Kim and including a handwritten note that revealed more vulnerability than I had seen from her in years. "We would be honored by your presence at this milestone celebration," she had written in her careful script. "Your father has been talking about wanting to share some important thoughts with family and friends, and it wouldn't feel complete without you there." The formal language couldn't completely mask the underlying plea for reconciliation, suggesting that my parents had spent months considering whether to extend this olive branch. Jessica called that evening to discuss the invitation, her voice carrying excitement mixed with apprehension about the potential for family healing or renewed conflict. "Dad's been different since the wedding," she told me, explaining that our father had become more reflective about his relationships and choices, particularly regarding his treatment of family members who didn't conform to his expectations. "He's been asking about your work, wanting to understand what you've accomplished. I think seeing the wedding dress made him realize what he threw away when he decided your dreams weren't worth supporting." The conversation revealed that my parents had been researching my career with the thoroughness they once applied to legal cases and real estate investments. They had discovered articles about Ethereal Couture in fashion magazines, client testimonials praising my design work, and social media posts showcasing gowns I had created for celebrities and socialites. The evidence of my success had apparently shaken their certainty about the wisdom of their ultimatum, forcing them to confront the possibility that they had been wrong about both my potential and my character. "Mom found an interview you did for Bridal Fashion Weekly," Jessica continued, referring to a feature article that had highlighted my innovative construction techniques and sustainable design practices. She read it 3 times, then spent an hour showing it to Dad and explaining technical details she had researched online. "I think she's finally understanding that fashion design is actually a sophisticated profession requiring real skills and business acumen." The image of my mother researching fashion industry terminology and construction techniques felt both touching and ironic, given her years of dismissing my work as frivolous hobby activity unworthy of serious consideration. Her late developing appreciation for my field suggested genuine effort to understand choices she had previously rejected, though it also highlighted how little attention she had paid to my interests during my formative years. "Will you come?" Jessica asked directly, her voice carrying the hope of someone who wanted to believe that damaged relationships could be repaired through honesty and mutual effort. "I know it's complicated, and I understand if you're not ready for that kind of interaction. But I think this might be an opportunity for real healing instead of just polite acknowledgement of past mistakes." I spent weeks considering the invitation while Rachel and I worked on our spring collection, a series of avant-garde wedding gowns that pushed traditional boundaries while maintaining commercial appeal. The creative work provided emotional outlet for processing my conflicted feelings about returning to Portland for an extended family gathering where I would be expected to celebrate my father while navigating relationships that remained fragile despite recent progress toward reconciliation. The decision to attend came gradually, influenced by recognition that my current happiness and success provided protection against the emotional manipulation that had once made family gatherings feel like performance evaluations.
I had built a life that belonged entirely to me, surrounded by people who valued my authentic self rather than demanding conformity to predetermined expectations. The teenager who had fled Portland with nothing but determination and art supplies had been replaced by a confident professional whose worth wasn't dependent on parental approval or family acceptance. Rachel offered to accompany me to Portland, understanding that facing family dynamics in their original setting would be more challenging than the neutral territory where our recent reconciliation attempts had occurred. Her presence would provide emotional support while serving as a reminder of the chosen family I had created through shared values and mutual respect. "You've earned the right to celebrate your success in front of people who didn't believe in you," she said pragmatically. "Sometimes the best revenge is showing up happy and accomplished." The flight to Portland felt different this time, marked by anticipation rather than the anxiety that had characterized my previous returns to confront family secrets and navigate emotional minefields. I wore a dress from our latest collection, a sophisticated piece that showcased my design aesthetic while maintaining appropriate formality for a country club celebration. The choice felt important, representing my identity as a successful designer rather than the rejected daughter who had once sought desperately for acceptance and validation. Jessica met me at the airport, her greeting warm and genuine in ways that our relationship had lacked during childhood when family dynamics had created competition rather than collaboration between us. She looked relaxed and happy, her marriage apparently providing the stability and contentment she had sought through following conventional paths. "You look amazing," she said, admiring my dress with the educated eye of someone who had learned to appreciate quality construction and innovative design. "Is this from your new collection?" During the drive to my hotel, Jessica provided detailed updates about our parents' recent behavior and attitudes, painting a picture of people who were struggling to reconcile their previous certainties with evidence that contradicted their assumptions. "Dad's been researching fashion business models," she reported with amusement. "He found articles about designers who built million-dollar companies and kept asking questions about profit margins and market sustainability. I think he's finally understanding that creative industries can be just as lucrative as traditional professions." The revelation that my father was applying his analytical skills to understanding my career field felt like vindication, though it also highlighted his inability to value anything he couldn't quantify in familiar terms. His newfound respect for fashion design seemed to stem from discovering its commercial potential rather than appreciating its artistic merit, but it represented progress toward acknowledging the legitimacy of paths he had previously dismissed. "And Mom?" I asked, curious about the woman who had once hidden vodka in water bottles while maintaining perfect social appearances. Jessica's expression grew more complex as she considered how to describe our mother's evolution during my absence from family life. "She's been sober for 18 months, Jessica said quietly, a revelation that shocked me more than news about my father's research activities. She joined AA after an incident at a charity gala where she embarrassed herself publicly. The program made her examine all her relationships and choices, including how she handled the situation with you." The information suggested that my mother's journey toward healing had been more comprehensive than simple recognition of career-related mistakes. "She talks about you sometimes during our phone calls," Jessica continued. "Not just about the wedding dress, but about memories from when we were kids. She remembers things I thought she had forgotten, like your fashion sketches and the way you used to redesign our clothes. I think losing you made her realize how much she had missed while she was drinking her way through family dinners and social obligations." The image of my mother attending AA meetings and examining her past behavior felt both hopeful and heartbreaking, suggesting that she had been struggling with demons I hadn't fully understood during my teenage years. Her alcoholism had seemed like weakness or selfishness, but recovery work might have revealed underlying issues that had made family dynamics more complicated than simple questions of support and understanding. The birthday celebration was held in the country club's main ballroom, decorated with understated elegance that reflected my parents' preference for sophisticated rather than flashy displays of success. The guest list included family friends, professional colleagues and social acquaintances who had known our family during the years when I had been present and then conspicuously absent from important gatherings. Walking into that room felt like returning to a stage where I had once played a supporting role, but now commanded attention as the lead in my own story. My entrance created a subtle stir among guests who remembered the Thompson family drama from 5 years earlier, when my departure had been the subject of whispered speculation about wayward children and permissive parenting. Now I returned as a successful professional whose achievements had been documented in magazines and social media, creating cognitive dissonance for people who had expected my story to end with failure and regret. The designer dress I wore, the confidence in my posture, and the genuine happiness in my smile contradicted every assumption they had made about the consequences of choosing dreams over family expectations. My father's reaction to seeing me was carefully controlled but visibly emotional, his face revealing surprise at my transformation despite Jessica's updates and his own research into my career. The successful attorney who had once dismissed my aspirations was confronting tangible evidence that his judgment had been flawed, that the daughter he had written off as irresponsible had built exactly the kind of life he claimed to value: financially successful, professionally respected, and personally fulfilling. Maya, he said formally when I approached to offer birthday congratulations, his voice carrying uncertainty about how to navigate this interaction. Thank you for coming. You look, he paused, apparently searching for words that would acknowledge my obvious success without admitting the magnitude of his previous errors. You look very successful, he finished awkwardly, his discomfort evident despite his legal training in managing difficult conversations. I am successful, I replied simply, meeting his gaze directly while maintaining the emotional boundaries that had protected me throughout years of building independence. The career you thought would never amount to anything has exceeded every goal I set for myself. My words weren't cruel, but they were honest, making clear that my achievements had been accomplished despite rather than because of family support. The conversation that followed was stilted but significant, touching on surface topics while both of us navigated the complex emotions of reunion between people who had hurt each other deeply. He asked questions about my business model, client base, and future plans, with the same analytical interest he applied to evaluating investments, though his inquiries felt more like genuine curiosity than skeptical interrogation. His newfound respect for my profession was evident despite his obvious struggle to admit how completely he had misjudged my potential. My mother's approach was more emotionally direct, her sobriety apparently having stripped away the diplomatic distance she had once maintained during difficult family interactions. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble, her voice carrying the clarity of someone who had practiced this conversation many times in private. Not just for the ultimatum, but for years of not seeing who you really were or valuing what you were trying to create. Her acknowledgement of systemic failure, rather than isolated mistakes, felt like genuine recognition of harm caused, suggesting that her recovery work had included honest examination of her role in family dysfunction. I was so focused on maintaining appearances and avoiding conflict that I forgot to protect my own daughter's dreams, she continued, tears threatening despite her obvious determination to complete this apology. I chose the easy path of supporting your father's decision instead of fighting for what I knew was right. The admission that she had understood the wrongness of their ultimatum but chosen compliance over advocacy cut deeply, revealing that my mother's failure had been moral rather than simply misguided. She had possessed the knowledge and authority to prevent my exile, but had chosen family harmony over individual justice, a choice that had cost everyone involved years of separation and regret. I forgive you, I said quietly, recognizing that holding grudges would prevent the healing that was finally becoming possible. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. We lost 5 years that can't be recovered, and relationships that were damaged in ways that might never be completely repaired. My words offered grace while maintaining realistic expectations about the limitations of late developing acknowledgement and regret. The evening's centerpiece was my father's birthday speech, delivered to the assembled guests with the polished confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention in formal settings. He spoke about professional achievements, family milestones, and lessons learned during 6 decades of life, but the most significant portion addressed mistakes he had made regarding family relationships and personal judgment. I've spent my career advising clients about risk management and decision-making, he said, his voice carrying through the ballroom with practiced authority. But I realized that I applied those same analytical skills inappropriately to my own family, treating my daughter's dreams as business proposals that needed to meet predetermined criteria for success and stability. His public acknowledgement of flawed parenting felt like vindication, though it also highlighted the systematic nature of problems that had extended far beyond single disagreements or miscommunications. My daughter Maya chose a path that I didn't understand or support, he continued, his eyes finding mine across the crowded room. I thought I was protecting her from instability and disappointment, but I was actually preventing her from becoming the remarkable woman she is today. Her success in fashion design has taught me that there are many ways to build meaningful careers and that my narrow definition of appropriate achievement caused me to miss the extraordinary talent that was developing under my own roof. The speech felt like public apology and acknowledgement rolled into formal presentation, delivered to an audience that included many people who had witnessed or heard about our family's dramatic separation years earlier. His words couldn't undo the pain and separation we had all experienced, but they represented genuine recognition of errors that had been motivated by love but executed through control and misunderstanding. After the formal speeches concluded, the evening evolved into smaller conversations and individual interactions that allowed for more personal processing of changed relationships and new understanding. Extended family members approached me with curiosity about my life and career, many expressing regret about losing contact during my years of absence from family gatherings. Friends of my parents asked questions about fashion design with genuine interest, their attention representing respect rather than polite social obligation. Tyler Brooks, my childhood friend who had remained loyal despite family pressure to distance himself from controversial situations, found me during the cocktail hour with enthusiasm that felt like emotional time travel. "I never doubted you'd succeed," he said warmly, embracing me with the familiarity of shared history and genuine affection. "Your designs were always incredible, even when we were teenagers. I saved some of the photos from prom dresses you made for our friends." His loyalty during my family's attempts to erase my existence had meant everything during those early years of independence when I had questioned whether anyone from my past remembered me with kindness rather than disappointment. Learning that he had preserved evidence of my early work felt like validation of connections that had survived despite systematic attempts to sever them completely. "I have something for you," he said conspiratorially, producing his phone and scrolling through saved images. "Remember Sarah Martinez's senior prom dress? The one with the hand-beaded bodice that took you 3 weeks to complete?" The photo showed an elaborate royal blue gown with intricate crystal work that had been one of my most ambitious high school projects, created for a friend whose family couldn't afford designer formal wear, but wanted something special for their daughter's once-in-a-lifetime occasion. Seeing that dress again triggered memories of late nights in my bedroom studio, hunched over detailed beadwork while my parents argued downstairs about my priorities and future prospects. The gown had been magnificent, worthy of any red carpet event, but my family had viewed it as evidence of misplaced effort rather than emerging talent. Sarah had felt like a princess wearing my creation, and her joy had fueled my determination to pursue fashion design despite lack of family support. "She still talks about that dress," Tyler continued. "She kept it all these years, and shows it to people when she wants to brag about knowing a famous designer before you were famous." His words suggested that my work had created lasting impact for clients even during my amateur period, generating the kind of emotional connection that justified every hour of painstaking craftsmanship. As the evening wound down, Jessica found me on the country club's terrace, overlooking manicured gardens that had provided backdrop for countless family celebrations during our childhood years. "How are you feeling about everything?" she asked, settling beside me on a wrought iron bench while party sounds drifted through open ballroom doors. This had to be overwhelming, facing everyone after so many years. "It's strange," I admitted, processing emotions that felt too complex for simple categorization. "Part of me wants to feel vindicated and triumphant, but mostly I just feel sad about all the time we lost." The recognition and apologies I had received felt meaningful but insufficient to compensate for years of separation and mutual misunderstanding that had shaped all our lives in ways that couldn't be undone through retroactive acknowledgement. "Do you think we can really rebuild our family relationships?" Jessica asked, her voice carrying hope tempered by realistic awareness of the damage that had been done. "Or are we just going through motions because everyone feels guilty about what happened?" Her question reflected my own uncertainty about whether genuine healing was possible, or whether we were simply managing social obligations related to family connection. "I think we can build something new," I said carefully, recognizing that expectations of returning to previous relationships would only lead to disappointment and renewed conflict. "Not the family we used to be, because that was built on control and conditional approval, but maybe something healthier based on accepting each other as we actually are, rather than who we think we should be." 6 months later, my parents made their first visit to Los Angeles, touring my studio and meeting Rachel while attempting to understand the life I had built during my years of independence. My father examined our business model with professional interest, while my mother studied completed gowns with newfound appreciation for technical complexity and artistic vision. Their effort to engage with my world represented genuine progress toward mutual understanding, though it also highlighted how foreign my choices remained to their conventional worldview. "This is quite an operation," my father commented, reviewing our client contracts and financial projections with the thoroughness of someone evaluating a business investment. "I had no idea the luxury bridal market could support this level of customization and pricing." His surprise at our commercial success revealed how completely he had misunderstood the economic potential of creative industries, though his acknowledgement felt like validation of choices he had once dismissed as financially irresponsible. My mother's questions focused more on creative processes and client relationships, demonstrating curiosity about aspects of my work that couldn't be quantified in spreadsheets or profit margins. "How do you translate someone's vision into something concrete?" she asked, studying sketches and fabric samples spread across my design table. "This seems like it requires understanding people on a very deep level." Her recognition of fashion design as psychological and artistic work, rather than mere craft, felt like understanding that had arrived decades late, but was nonetheless welcome. The visit concluded with dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where we discussed future plans and the possibility of more regular contact that wouldn't be dependent on crisis situations or major life events. My parents expressed interest in following my career development and potentially visiting Los Angeles more frequently, though all of us recognized that rebuilding trust and intimacy would require time and consistent effort rather than dramatic gestures or single conversations. Today, 3 years after Jessica's wedding revelation, our family relationships have evolved into something that feels both familiar and entirely new. We maintain regular contact through video calls and text messages, sharing updates about professional achievements, personal milestones, and everyday experiences that were once secret due to separation and misunderstanding. My parents attend my fashion shows when their schedules permit, approaching my work with respect and interest that would have changed everything if it had existed during my formative years. Jessica and I have developed an adult friendship that encompasses shared history while acknowledging the different paths we chose and the different people we became during our years of separation. She often models pieces from my collections, her confidence and happiness serving as testament to the possibility of healing relationships that seemed permanently damaged. Her marriage to Michael has provided stability and contentment that validates her choice to follow conventional paths, just as my career success has validated my decision to pursue creative independence. The wedding dress that brought us back together hangs in Ethereal Couture's showroom as an example of our signature style, though its deeper significance as symbol of reconciliation and forgiveness remains known only to our family. Brides admire its technical perfection and artistic beauty without understanding the years of separation and pain that informed every stitch, but that hidden meaning adds emotional weight to work that already represents the pinnacle of my professional achievement. Rachel and I recently opened a second location in Portland, a decision that feels like coming full circle while maintaining the independence that has defined my adult life. The studio allows me to serve Pacific Northwest clients while spending more time with family members who are still learning to appreciate choices they once rejected. Working in my hometown while living on my own terms represents the kind of integration that seemed impossible during my years of exile and struggle. Sometimes I walk past our old house in the West Hills, now occupied by a different family whose children play in the same gardens, where Jessica and I once created elaborate fantasy worlds, filled with princesses wearing gowns I would someday learn to create. The Victorian mansion looks unchanged despite everything that has happened to its former residents, serving as a reminder that buildings outlast the relationships and dreams they shelter. The little girl who once promised to design her sister's wedding dress could never have imagined the circuitous path that promise would take toward fulfillment, or the healing that would emerge from pain that once seemed insurmountable. Family relationships don't always follow predictable patterns, and sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in circumstances that initially appear to be losses or betrayals. Today I understand that authentic love requires accepting people as they are rather than demanding they become what we think they should be, a lesson that applies equally to parents who struggled to support unconventional dreams, and daughters who chose authenticity over approval. The wedding dress that reconnected us serves as daily reminder that some promises are worth keeping regardless of the obstacles they encounter, and that creativity has power to transform pain into beauty that lasts far beyond the circumstances that inspired it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.